Well, that was literally amazing because I looked at my watch and it was like 9 minutes to go on live. And I was like, where did the day go? And so I started kind of like, not really freaking out, but like, hey, let me try to see if I can pull this off in time for when we're supposed to go on 4:30. And lo and behold, I was able to get everything loaded. And here we are, right on time. So good evening. It is Monday.
Barely on time.
Oh, it was like 2 seconds and then it was go time. So I guess it's just like riding a bike. We got to get back into this thing again and get used to it. But good evening. It's Monday, January 13th, 2025. Welcome to episode 94 of Porterhouse and Teal Live. And man, it is actually very hard for me to believe that this month is almost half over. Seems like last week it was just, Christmas or so. But what do you think about that, Rebecca? I mean, does it seem like we're blazing away here this year already?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, well, like I said last time, the older you get, the faster it goes. So hold on to every day.
Yeah, that's true. You know, you do have to look at the bright side of every day and try to live it to its fullest. And we're pretty busy today, man, running around as we always are here on live stream night. And we just pulled it together in time to get here. So welcome, everyone. Bill Warner and Bill Zegley and Hogs 14 without training wheels. Good evening tonight. Glad to see you guys. And
hello to you guys.
Yeah, it's been a pretty active week, man. I mean, as always, it seems like there's always something new to talk about, something new to happen, you know, in the world and in the country. But this week they buried old Jimmy Carter. And he is widely known as a very, very poor president. But it's interesting to me how when somebody dies, they never really get up and say those kind of things. They just, during the eulogy, they always bring up what an amazing person he was and, you know, all the great things that they did. But I mean, he is widely regarded as one of the worst presidents in modern American history. And he's got some competition with somebody currently in the White House, but he lived to be a ripe old age of 100. Isn't that something?
That is amazing. However, I have to say that he's looked dead for quite some time.
Yeah, he has. That's kind of sad, actually. He's a dude that I think you know what his claim to fame is he's just a really nice guy, and he did a lot of good humanitarian things, and for that I think that's a fantastic thing to have accomplished and a legacy to have left behind. And we'll talk a little bit about legacy as we exit out tonight. But another thing that happened was, there's a massive wildfire that everybody's talking about. And I do have some perspective on that, having been a firefighter in the state of California for more than 30 years and worked for the lead agency, CAL FIRE, throughout my entire career for over 30 years. And so I've got some perspective on that because there's a lot of things that are being thrown around out there right now in the media, and people are speculating and this and that. And I just wanted to try to lend some, some balance, or maybe just a different viewpoint or different perspective to that. Because that's what we do here in California. We wildfire.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. There's actually, I can recall one summer where I saw you a total of 4 days in the whole entire summer.
Really?
Yep.
Man, that's not too good.
I was home with the kids and you were home a day and then back out on the fire. And it added up to about 4 days. I tried to warn our daughter-in-law when she was marrying our son. I said, listen, you're going to be a single mom.
Yeah. For
a good chunk of time.
Yeah. That's just nature of the business, you know? I mean, it is what it is. Wow, 4 days. Huh? Yeah. And then also TikTok's going away. I don't know. I'll get your thoughts on that, Rebecca. And I have some thoughts on it as well. And I've got a few questions from the Homestead Q&A, and want to ask the question. So maybe you can start thinking about it now, Rebecca, but who has been responsible? Who has been the most responsible for the shift in the balance of power within the last 4 years. But first things first, how are you doing this evening?
I'm awesome.
Yeah.
I thought I'd throw out a different word.
Okay.
Actually, I don't have anything really to complain about. I guess I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky person, so it works out nice. I had an older gentleman come up to me at the grocery store. I was putting my groceries in the trunk of my car, and I thought he needed a cart. And I would say he was roughly in his 80s, middle 80s. And so I handed him the cart, and the sweet little man, he actually put the cart away. He didn't even need a cart. It was the sweetest thing ever.
Yeah, that's a pretty nice gesture. He wasn't like trying to make time with you or anything, was he?
Absolutely not.
Just being a nice guy doing a nice thing, a gentlemanly thing.
Yeah, it was very sweet.
Yeah, that's something I think you don't see often anymore. Is guys being gentlemen, opening doors for people or whatever. And I would hope that if I was to do something like that, then somebody wouldn't take offense to it, right? Mm-hmm. I think that there's some women who may be offended if you extended that level of respect or courtesy toward them. But
well, I think if he actually would have kind of tried to move closer to me, mm-hmm. and got in my personal space, I would have had a different opinion. But he walked my direction, mm-hmm. and stuck his hand out to the cart. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I assumed he needed a cart. I'm just like, hey.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, you got anything going on the homestead? What do you got to talk about?
Well, I am excited because you bought some more plants. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to possibly making a different type of jam when they mature, mm-hmm. come in.
Right.
So that's kind of exciting for me. I love watching the chicks grow. They're getting big.
Yeah.
They're getting so big. It's kind of nice to have them when they're still cute. They're starting to enter their ugly phase. Yeah. A little bit.
Yeah, they're definitely doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Rebecca mentioned we bought some plants, and I went up to while we were up in Reading the other day, and we stopped in our favorite nursery up there and looked around and saw what they had. I was actually looking for bare root strawberries, but those won't be in until February, as I've been told. But I was able to pick up a couple of bare root, berry plants, and got some red raspberry and stuff like that. So I'm going to be putting that into the ground. And so that's what she was referring to. And also,
I didn't want to be a spoiler of what you bought.
No, that's fine. You can say. I put in and bought some more lettuce because it's kind of good to do some succession planting. We haven't gotten to the point where the lettuce that we have currently is needing to be replaced entirely. But as it ages, it starts to get to that stage where it's bolting. And as it does, it gets a little bit more bitter to the taste. And so it's always a good idea. So to be thinking about the next, succession planting. Mm-hmm. And so I thinned out in the box today and got those put into the ground. So that's kind of a nice little addition.
It is. Actually, I told you last night when I went out to gather lettuce, not realizing that you had set your new lettuce down in there. Right. I was reaching for it. I was thinking, wow, that really looks like nice lettuce. Oh, wow, that box really picked up pretty easy. Yeah. I think that must be the new lettuce. So luckily I didn't pick any of it.
Yeah. Hogs 14 chimed in. He said that's his favorite nursery too. And he's up here in the northern end of California as well. And so he's referring to a nursery called Wind Tour. And it's pretty nice, man. They got a lot of cool stuff in there year round, and it's very expensive. It's not like you're going to go there and get any bargains, but they do have good quality stock and everything. And it's always nice to go in there and get a few things. And
our dog likes to drink water out of their fountains.
Yeah, they got koi ponds and things in there, and she goes in and puts her dog spit in there. So that's cool. They appreciate it. Hey, how you doing this evening, Terminator? Good to see you. Yeah, right on. Cool. Hope things are not too cold on you up there. I understand that the middle of the country, as well as what's up north there in Canada land, is experiencing the cold temperatures. I'm sure you're used to it, but I guess we're wearing our sweatshirts because it's cold here too. It's like 72 in the bedroom, and it was like, it got up to maybe 60 outside today. So it was a little chilly.
Ladies' night. That sounds fun.
Oh boy, wouldn't that be just a hoot? A ladies' night.
Well, is that where they were going?
Well, I guess so. Yeah. So cool. I sound rough. Yeah. I got another cold, man, somehow this last week or whatever. And I'm kind of getting over it now, but I got little sniffles and was coughing stuff up. And so I don't know what's going on. I must got the long COVID.
Don't let him go into great detail on what he's coughing up. Trust me, I've heard it.
Oh man. You've heard it, but, yeah, she says it's 20 degrees. That's a
little bit chillier than here.
That's a little chilly, but I don't think that's that cold for them, unless, I don't think that's that cold in Fahrenheit, right? We are having a snowstorm right now, and it's been down -30. Now that's cold.
Ooh.
That's cold. So that's a really good idea to kind of stay inside and try to stay out of the chill. But
I don't think our chickens would like that much.
No, they're not quite acclimated to that.
So when we first moved here, and typically we don't get snow, and I might have brought this up in the previous, but it was either our first year or our second year. Our poor cows were just mystified because it actually snowed, and they didn't know what to do.
Right. Well, most things that have never seen that probably wouldn't, I guess. Also, I'm getting kind of excited. Have been wanting to make some biochar, but we've had quite a bit of rain here, and it's prevented me from burning my char pit because the feedstock that I'm going to be putting into it is taking on a lot of moisture from all this rain. So I've been waiting for a spell of dry weather to kind of get some of that moisture drawn out of it so I can actually do an effective char burn. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Where it looks like, I don't know what the weather forecast was, but I don't think we've got any precip headed our way for a while. But
I don't. Now, of course, this is what they say, and it changes daily. But it doesn't look like we're going to get rain until middle of February.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want it to go too long because that's something that does happen here often, from time to time. We've had a decent amount of rain, at least to start the year, but we need to keep it coming because we've seen it before where it just goes 7 weeks, where we haven't had any rain, and pretty soon they're talking drought again,
And then I have to be on my toes and remember to go out and add chemicals to the pool, or it turns a nasty color.
Right. And then, Terminator's saying that her ladies' night is a ladies' panel, only men and women in the chat. We are an all-American channel when Yoda can come back on through Grumpy Acres. Oh, cool.
Yeah, nice.
Let's see here. What was I going to talk about? Oh, another thing that I did this week that kind of ties in, it segues in some ways to what I'm going to talk about regarding the Southern California fires, and that's putting in fire breaks around here. I was able to get out and get my box scraper on this week, and because the ground is dried out well enough where I'm able to get my tractor out without sinking it, but it's still perfect for doing the work that I want to do as far as putting in fire breaks. And so started up in the front field going a couple blades wide, and that's something that Rebecca uses more than I do for a place to run. So she can stay on the property and just run around the perimeter of where I've basically disked with this box scraper. And
keeps me off the streets.
Yeah, it does. It does. And it's nice when you have property that you can utilize in that regard. But it's also something that I'm very keenly aware of, the threat, having a piece of property that's right along the road, and I know exactly where the fire is going to be the most threat, which is coming from the north. So I'm going to make sure that all of that's treated, and I'm going to start early on it. I'm not going to wait until the grass is really tall, but I was able to start that this week, which was pretty nice. Yeah,
I would say most of our neighbors are pretty good about the the grass that grows along the street, of mowing that down and keeping that short. Almost every house, I would say, does that. So that's really nice.
Yeah. I got a question here from Kathy McCall. Says, hi, here from South Carolina. Is it true char is good for chickens? Yeah. Char is in many ways good for a lot of livestock, and it can be added to their feedstuffs, and it helps with their microbiome. And, you know, their chickens, if you give it to them, they're not going to like just overly like eat it. But I put it in the yard, and they'll eat it, but it's not like they're going to overdose on it. They're going to eat what they feel like they want to eat. Maybe they don't eat it at all. And if you wanted to actually encourage them to do that, you could actually add it directly to their food. And then there would be kind of a little bit, they would get it as a, just kind of a little side benefit. But you're really only going to use about 1% of char, 1% by volume, in other words. So it'd be like 1 part char to 99 parts of the feed. And that's generally the recommendation that, I've been able to research, and what people have done in, agriculture and different operations. Dairies have experimented with it. They've experimented with it in feedlots and stuff like that. I've fed it to my pigs, and it can't hurt them. It's definitely something that has benefit. So
is it also a deodorizer kind of? Does it help?
What it does is it a very absorbent. So it's going to help to absorb odor. And I actually put it in places where the animals aren't going to necessarily like I don't put it in my chicken coops on the floors a lot, because we have to go in there and walk around. The chickens have to go in there and walk around. And all of those particulates from the char becomes airborne, and it's not the best thing for you to be breathing. And so I do put it in their bedding, but only if it's in an area where they're either not going to be walking on it. I have one coop where they can have their manure fall through onto this bedding. They're not exactly disturbing it. They're not walking on it. And so it's sedentary. Or I use it also outside when I have like livestock, either like, beef or steer or something like that, where I'll put that where they're feeding. And I've done that with my hogs as well. I put it out where they're feeding, and then they walk over the top of it, they crush it, and then they also use the bathroom on top of it. And it's kind of killing a lot of birds with one stone, where it's inoculating the biochar by their manure, but it's also helping to absorb odor in a sense. And I have noticed a pretty significant impact with like the hogs and stuff like that, because their excrement and their urine gets pretty pungent and pretty stinky. So
we have, I believe it's B. Terry. Says, I have a question.
Okay. Let me go back up here. I can't see it. Let's see here. What's the question, B. Terry? Hey, what's up, Skane's girl? How are you this evening? Is bat guano good for biochar? Is bat guano is good for like a lot of stuff. It would just be like any other manure, right? So if you're looking to combine the two, the biochar is going to absorb the nutrient from the bat guano. The bat guano is, from my understanding, is very, very high in nitrogen, on the level of even higher than a chicken. A chicken is like, I think 1 to 9 carbon to nitrogen ratio, and bat guano is even higher than that, from what I can recall. So yes, you can utilize that if you can get some bat guano, I suppose. I don't really shop for bat guano.
Me neither.
No. nor do we have bats in the belfry. But yeah, I mean, people use that as a something to add as an amendment to their compost or to their soil as an amendment. So absolutely.
And that's where you also use coffee grounds, right?
Yep. That's just kind of like a source of nitrogen, essentially. It says, I was wondering about when they scratch through the compost piles and mask up maybe when mixing it in somewhere. Yeah, absolutely. Try to just protect your respiratory. I don't tend to want to breathe that stuff. I mean, when it's in the soil, it's generally speaking going to be in the soil. But if you're crushing it or you're handling it or something like that, it's not the best stuff to be breathing. Get that shit in your lungs or whatever. Maybe that's why I have so many colds, huh?
Well, you just got your saying you haven't been able to do biochar for.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see here.
I think it's from the sauna.
Okay, here we go. What's the difference between a hippo and a Zippo? The one is real heavy and the other is a little lighter. Ah. All right.
We have a hippo of our own.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we do. So cool. I'm going to go over some questions that I got from this last week and answer some of those questions here. So let me pull them up and we'll see what I've got here. Sorry. Okay. All right. Hold on a second.
We have one of those. What hippos?
What's that?
Land hippos. Yeah, she's a land hippo. She's got a hippo nose.
Electroculture for a while and had good success. Yeah, cool. I'm not really that familiar with it. I've I understand what it is, but I haven't learned much more about it than what I just read, but that's cool. This is from Brenda Price, 8284, says, do your Novogen lay an extra large egg? If so, how long to get extra large eggs when they start to lay? Jumbo's in the second year of lay? ? Thanks. And I said, young birds can lay some pretty inconsistent small eggs, but in our experience with this breed, they get it figured out within about a month or so after becoming productive. Generally speaking, the majority of the eggs laid are a jumbo size, meaning they are 71 grams or larger, with the remainder being extra large to large. And rarely do we get any smaller ones, with the odd exception. We've gotten like 3 of them this year.
You want me to go get the one in the kitchen?
Oh, man. You still got it?
I think so.
It's ridiculous. No, you don't have to go get it.
I'll have to go get it. It looks like a robin egg.
Yeah. Well, you're going to leave and go get this egg.
I'm going to go get it.
Okay. She wants to go get the egg. But anyhow, yeah, we do occasionally get smaller eggs, just some weird anomalies. But generally speaking, these birds lay a pretty large egg. And that's been really nice as far as I'm concerned. But next question. I was asked by Joe Outdoors and said, do you find the need for artificial light during the shorter days? And I said, no, we don't actually provide any artificial light during the shortened days of winter. And that's generally the theory and the practice that some people have employed to provide additional lighting in their coops so that it kind of tricks the hens into thinking the days are longer, because typically speaking, that's one of the reasons why they trigger to go into the molt, is during those shorter hours of the day, less light and all of that. I will say it hasn't been necessary for us, quite honestly. That video I put out a couple of weeks ago, that wasn't a bunch of hooey. We've actually been just still cranking out eggs. And you actually sold how many just today? I mean, now this was from the week that we sold, but she sold to 2 different clients today.
7 dozen eggs.
7 dozen. So she sold 7 dozen plus I eat.
He eats 7 eggs every morning.
So we're killing it with the eggs, and that's with 30 birds. And we have a number of them that are only laying like intermittently now because of they're the older hens that I need to get butchered when we get the other ones that are going to come online. But that's one of the ways that you keep eggs all year and are not beholden to the bullshit from a bird flu or something else, right? So yeah, we don't really need to supplement our birds with light. And partially that's due to, you don't need to trick egg layers into laying, because that's really what they're bred to do.
Now, you can't tell me this is not the cutest chicken egg you've ever seen.
You got to hold it up to the thing.
Yeah, they should be able to see it.
I don't know. Here, look at this thing.
That is a chicken egg.
It's not a
robin egg. It's a chicken egg.
That's tiny. And so that came out of one of our Novagens. Occasionally that'll happen. I think that's like the third one of those we've seen. We don't know which bird it is. If I knew which bird it was, I'd probably already have killed it. But yeah.
We see some pretty interesting things. I mean, some of them are like the shape of a football. They're big.
That's what happens when you have chickens, man. You go to the store and you're not going to see that in the carton. They're going to give you the best shaped eggs. And so until you start laying your own eggs and you have chickens, you're never going to see that. But
some of the shells look like they have wrinkles on them.
Yeah, you see all kinds of anomalies that come through. But, anyhow,
I wanted to put that one in the incubator to see if it had actually hatched.
Well, you should have. You should have run another batch.
It's kind of too late now.
No, I don't know. Anyhow, this is from Christian Schultz 3466. And this was on a butchering a hog video that I did. And that video is still getting a lot of love, man. It's getting a lot of views, and people comment on it occasionally. And this guy, basically, I had to translate it because it was in another language, and he basically was saying, buy a bolt gun. And so what he's referring to is a captive bolt gun, and those are not used. Oh, come on, man. What am I doing?
I have no idea what you're doing.
Sorry, I'm clicking around and I'm getting myself screwed up. But anyhow, he was basically saying use a bolt gun. Well, these animals were butchered with a 22 mag rifle. That's what the butcher that came out and did the kill, that's their preferred caliber of choice, is 22 Magnum. And the other guy that comes out and does it, Frank the kill guy, he uses a 22 Magnum for everything that he kills, including, beef and stuff like that. And what Frank does, though, however, is he'll come to the kill with his secondary gun, and his secondary gun is a rifle 357 Magnum. So if he, somehow foul shoots the animal and he needs a second shot, then he'll pull out the 357 and finish it. But he says he rarely has to do that.
He's pretty good.
Yeah. He's a pro. And so,
I think he's hoping to carry on the legacy. He's got like 6 sons. His wife was hoping for a daughter, but anyway,
yeah,
she doesn't want to try anymore.
So anyhow, I responded to this guy because I don't know why he said that, what his motivation for saying that was, because that's really not the appropriate tool in this environment. You don't kill animals with a captive bolt, from a ranch kill. So I said bolt guns are the preferred method in the slaughterhouse, and captive bolt is a useful tool for animals that are in close confinement, and also where there's others working in close proximity. So that's absolutely appropriate in a place where they're going to be running them through one after one in a chute, and then the kill guy can just reach over, put the bolt where it needs to be on the animal's head, hit the button, and the bolt goes in, pierces the brain, and it mechanically stuns them. And then it's just retracted, and it's run, generally speaking, with like a 22 caliber charge. And my understanding is they have new ones now that are battery operated. So I don't know if they're Makita or whatever, but they're battery operated. So technology is changing, and that's what's most useful. So again, I don't know why he said that. He probably knew. I don't know what his motivation was, but that would not work in a ranch scenario, because most animals, you can't get that close to them, and they have to be shot from the other side of the corral or afar or what have you. So it's just not appropriate. But I got a chance to witness that as a child, because we used to raise veal calves, and my sister's husband at the time, he also was a butcher, he raised veal calves on our property with my dad, where they redid the barn, and we started raising like 100 veal calves at a time. And then when those calves would go in for slaughter, I would go with them. And Ron was one of the people working there as well. So I got a chance to check all that out, watch them get, bolted up and run through the kill floor and everything. And it's quite an operation, man. It's something that the average person, if they saw that, they'd probably be freaked out. But I think, having my understanding of that as a kid, watching it happen on our ranch, it was just one more like next level of like, oh, okay, that's where your meat comes from. But I don't think most people would really want to see that. And it's kind of a stressful thing, man, for animals. Not a ranch kill, because they don't even really know what's going on. That's what's so nice about having it done on your property, because the animal, they don't even know what hit them. They don't even have one bad second. They're just like looking at you, and the next thing you know, they're on the ground.
Yeah.
So anywho, next question, I suppose. Let's see here. Let me check to make sure we're not missing out here. Let's see here. I don't know. You can help maybe look at that while I'm reading this. It says, this is Ambassador for God, 6808. Said, I see a lot of mulch in the coop. Do you continuously top off with mulch? And I said, yes, I deep mulch in the coops, but I only do a few cycles. So I generally clean my coops out every couple months and start over with fresh carbon. Conceivably, I could continually deep mulch by just adding more carbon and then maybe clean it out once a year. But, I can either clean it out about every couple months and it's not a big deal, or I can go in there once a year and muck out all this material, which may take me a lot longer. And so that's kind of how I roll. But yes, I do deep mulch. I probably only do it like 3 times, like 3 times is about as much as I'll do, which by the time I get the third batch in, I've got about a yard material inside of the coop, because that's 6. I usually do like 2 wheelbarrows per layer. And 6 wheelbarrows is a yard.
Yeah, you keep the coops pretty clean, which I think is pretty healthy for the chickens.
Yeah, I think it is quite a bit. And one of the reasons why you want to mulch and make sure that excrement, their manure, is not, starting to accumulate to the point where you start to smell ammonia. It's very high in uric acid. It's got a lot of it's essentially what chicken manure is they don't urinate and go to the defecate separately. It's all kind of in one thing. So that's why it's so high in nitrogen, because it's both urine and manure. And the accumulation of that mixed in with the carbon is, over time, it's going to start to decompose. It's going to get wet. It's going to start to off gas. And then that's not healthy for them just to sit up in their coop at night breathing all of that ammonia. And so that's why you need to go in there and kind of layer it into a deep mulch type of an arrangement. But I don't like I said, I don't like to let it go too deep. So that's what we do here.
They love it. They love it when you put new shavings in, and they can't wait to toss it all over.
Let's see here. Let's see, that'll keep you. Yeah, we'll see you later, Terminator.
See ya.
That'll keep you. All right. Okay. I think I'm way. Okay.
Yeah, you stopped and.
Well, can you read those so I can do this?
I couldn't, because
lean forward and read it then if you can't.
That's not what I was talking about.
Okay.
Where you had stopped was already questions that you'd already answered.
Okay, this is the video I just put out last, and Eco Blue Farms 223 asks, after they reach 72 weeks, are they too tough to eat? No, they're not too tough to eat, but the longer they go, and like I said earlier, is we try to process them by the 3rd year. So they're going to get a chance to go through the first winter, the second molt, and then they're not going to make a 3rd molt. In other words, they'll get a chance to lay through the summer and then they're gone. And, you start getting beyond 3 years for me, when you process a bird, it's kind of like starting to get chewy. And so it's not that it's too tough to eat, but you can certainly get creative with how you prepare it. I mean, obviously you could cook the hell out of it, make some chicken and dumplings or whatever. Or you can, if it's even really tough, you can grind it, and have ground chicken. One of the things that we do is take the meat and then we just render it down and she makes broth, chicken broth, with vegetable scraps and stuff like that, and then cans it. And then the meat generally goes to our dog because she eats good.
She does eat good. So she gets some of it, and some of it goes in the freeze dryer and becomes snacks. Right.
I mean, if we were starving and we needed that protein, we'd be eating that, but we don't. And we can go another route. So we tend to help our dog by feeding her as good as we can. And that's something that we do with some of the older chicken meat that we get.
She likes it.
Okay. Okay. And this is just a comment, more or less. And this is one of the butchering videos that we did. This is the beef that we put up. And interestingly enough, that video by now, I had mentioned this a while ago, where that kill video, it didn't really do much when we first put it out. And then all of a sudden, YouTube found a home for it, found an audience for this video. And then it just went viral for me. And right now it's over 500,000 views for this long form video. It's about 16 minutes long. And people like to see that. They've never seen an animal get shot in the head and then get processed in that way, because most people don't show that on YouTube. They sanitize it or whatever. And so it's one of the reasons why I haven't made any money on it. I think I've made like 10 or 15 bucks on this, and I've got 500,000 views. But this person says, I have not seen a more merciful method than this. If they were going to execute me, I would have chosen this method. Thank you for your humanity. So, some people have that viewpoint because it isn't really anything where the animal even knew what hit them. It's not anything where they were suffering. And so I think when some people get an opportunity to witness that, they might have a different perspective. And so that was that person's take. Obviously, I get people who make comments that don't like that video and think that I'm a horrible person or whatever, and I could care less that this video wasn't for them. So, yeah, that's all I had for Q&A tonight.
So it looks like Skane's girl does the same thing that we do with the chicken.
So Skane says, I cook leg quarters for my dogs, then make bone stock for them, then puree what's left and freeze dry it for them. Yeah. Yeah, that's super good. Yeah, your dogs, they're going to love you for it. I mean, we don't really eat the organ meats, so that's what we do with the organ meats. Now, other people, they really love it and they like that. I just don't have a preference for that taste. I know that if I did, it would be good for me to eat, but it's also good for my dog. So that's what we do with some of those innards that we get from our kills.
All right. So Kathy McCall has a question for you.
Right here.
Yes.
Yeah, I do have a video on processing chickens, and it's the way that I do it is a no pluck method. So, I mean, some might view that as being wasteful, but essentially what I do is I take the breasts, I take the tenders, I take the legs and thighs, and then I take the drumettes. So the little wing tips, those go, whatever to the dog. The feet, those go to the dog. And then the rest of the bird, the back and all the rest of that, the insides, the heart, the gizzard, and all that stuff that people like, the neck, the back, I don't really like that stuff. So why am I going to try to gut a chicken and then, have this little layer hen, which isn't really much anyhow. There's not much on that bird anywho. So it's just better for me just to do it in that way. It's a no pluck method where I basically just undress the bird, pull out the legs, cut out the breasts and the tenders. And then there you go. That's what I take home to either process for food for us or process food for the dog. Mm-hmm. And so I do have that video out, but I don't do the other with layers at all.
So B. Terry's saying something.
Mm-hmm.
I can't read it, but
off the subject. But would you rather tile the broad fork, because we have a smaller garden and the tiller is beating me up? But after looking for a broad fork, they are asking an arm and a leg for one. Yes, they are expensive. Man, I'm drawing a blank on the one that I have right now. Oh, it's called Meadow Creature. Look up Meadow Creature. And they are expensive. It'll be about 200 and something bucks, like closer to 300. But I'm telling you, man, it'll be a wise investment if you're going to go that route, because you won't break it. It's a very durable piece of equipment that, I implore you to try to break this damn thing. It's well made, and they come with different length tines. The one that I have is a 12-inch, but they go like 14, they go 16, and you have different options there. But I like my broad fork. And in the area where I am actually just going kind of a no-till setup, that's the implement that I use in there. And I use it in other places too. It's a useful tool. Spendy though, you're right. Mm-hmm. But as with anything, you get what you pay for, and if it's something that you want and you're going to use and you're going to have for years, I guarantee you'll have it for years. What does this say?
Your dogs get sweet potatoes?
My choice is the broad fork. Loosen the soil, not till. Depends on what type of growing you choose to do. Yeah, I agree, Bill. Yeah, okay. So that was it for Q&A. One thing I wanted to get into was the wildfires that have occurred here this week. This is kind of the main topic, if you will. And a lot of discussion, a lot of interest in this because of the amount of damage and destruction that has occurred here in California. And if you've listened to me at all in the past, you will know that I have stated on numerous occasions that this isn't a surprise, and it shouldn't be to anyone living here in California. And I just want to start by saying I would want to reiterate to everyone listening, regardless of where you live, that you are your own first responder, because oftentimes the government is slow to react. And by the time the help actually does arrive to you, for many of you, it will be too late. And so it's important for people to understand. It's just important to understand that. And when you live in an area that's prone to certain weather patterns and conditions where you may be impacted by a disaster, you need to do your homework. And it doesn't matter if it's a fire or a flood or a hurricane or a tornado or what have you. And so I just think that that's the most important thing that I think a lot of people are missing here. They want to blame somebody for what's happened here, but it really goes back to, the individuals themselves. And so that's where I think needs to be stated, right, Rebecca?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if the fire's going and it's raging, There's not really anything you can do for it.
It depends. It depends. But yeah, when it's burning like it was burning in Southern California, there's not a lot that anyone is going to do. I think that's the spoiler alert to this whole thing. So I think that most people who, if you live in an urban area, most people assume that if you're in kind of like a suburb or a city or a town or something like that, you don't expect your entire neighborhood to be consumed by fire. But if you are at all historically educated to what happens in places like California, you would understand that these things have been happening for years and years and years. And when I was in the academy, this was one of the fires that they actually talked about it because it was such a big thing back then. But let me see if I can pull this up. This is a Wikipedia article talking about the Bel Air fire. And so the Bel Air fire was a disaster that began as a brush fire on November 6, 1961 in the Bel Air community of Los Angeles. The fire destroyed 484 homes and burned 6,090 acres. At least 200 firemen were injured, mostly with eye injuries due to smoke and flying embers. And the fire was fueled by strong Santa Ana winds. So it says multiple celebrities were affected by the fire: Dennis Hopper, Brooke Hayward, Burt Lancaster, Joan Fontaine, Zsa Zsa Gabor. The list goes on, including at the time, former Vice President Richard Nixon and actor Robert Taylor and a number of others. And so that was one of the first incidents. That was one of the first incidents where it really became, prominent and noteworthy. But this has been going on year after year for many years. But people seem to have kind of an ability to forget their history. And, as time goes on, something doesn't happen. It's easier to put that in the rearview mirror. But it's nothing new here in California. And I think that there's a lot of positioning right now by politicians and other people who have an agenda to kind of spread the message that these fires are somehow a result of climate change. And, I'm of the opinion that that's just nonsense. Devastating fires like this have actually been occurring since
the beginning of time.
Exactly. Since the beginning of, man being on this planet and having some impact. And I think that there are some factors that have influenced the frequency of these fires and the devastating nature of incidents like this. And you have seen an increase in the number of this sort of thing over the course of time, and that they have been more devastating. As you will note, the fire in Bel Air was only about 400 homes. That's a lot of homes, but I mean, we're seeing homes now burning by the thousands. And that has nothing to do with climate change, but what it does have to do with, it has to do with population density. There's a lot more people here now. There's a lot more people who have placed themselves in the urban interface. And that's a term used by folks in the fire service to acknowledge that there's been urban sprawl into the wildlands of the area. So now you're mixing and putting communities in the wildlands. It's no longer singular homes, it's entire communities. And when you do that, and then when you have a fire that starts of this magnitude, it really doesn't matter what you do. I think the other factor that has been causing an increase in this and the intensity is just, we have been, for more than a couple hundred years now, been aggressively pursuing suppressing these fires. And, it's what that's done is it's caused an increase in the fuel load in these areas, which is also made worse by an inadequate fuel modification strategy to counteract the increased fuel load. So essentially, we have more fuel in an area that used to, when a fire would start, it would burn the entire area. And it was really not that big of an issue because it would reduce the fuel. And then over the course of time, that fuel would grow back. And it was no harm, no foul. There wasn't communities there, but now you've got communities that have an increased fuel load with an increased amount of population density placed within it. And so it's really caused the agency that I worked for to get very aggressive with that. Over the course of my career, there was a lot of lessons learned. There was a lot of new innovations, a lot of different tactics were being employed, a lot of different learning of how to best manage and fight these incidents. And, I've said before, we get a lot of practice at this. And so that's why we're very good at it. Right now, that fire down there, the big one, is under what's called unified command. And so CAL FIRE is in unified command with the other agencies having jurisdictional responsibility down there. So Los Angeles County, Los Angeles City, yada, yada, yada. There's probably multiple cooperators all having some form of a stake, but CAL FIRE is involved because why? Because it's on state responsibility area. It's in the SRA, as we call it. There's LRA, local responsibility, state responsibility. Los Angeles County is a contract county that we don't even provide protection for on our own lands, but we pay Los Angeles County to provide that protection. So there's 6 contract counties in the state where we pay the county to provide protection. Right? You've got Ventura, Santa Barbara, Kern, Marin, I don't know, I'm missing a few, LA. So we don't, that's our responsibility to protect state, but we don't provide the protection because we pay them. It makes more sense for us just to pay them to do it.
So there's CAL FIRE and there's the Forest Service. And they have 2 different philosophies on how they fight their fires. But when I met you, wasn't it Department of Forestry and Fire Protection? Yeah.
It was CDF, Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. It was more geared toward forestry and all of that. And then since, in the course of my career, they changed the name. The mission had to evolve along with that because of how much we are tied to the fire suppression side of things. We're not as much forestry as we are fire protection. We provide protection in so many different municipalities where different counties pay CAL FIRE to provide the protection because we have the infrastructure in order to just bring our resources in and our knowledge and our know-how and our everything. There's counties where, like Riverside County, that's a contract county. A huge county with millions of people in it. And they've got truck companies and medic squads and all of this that we run, CAL FIRE runs. So we're not just a wildland agency. It's a very diverse, very complex, very, very coordinated effort here in the state of California. There's a lot of mutual cooperation. It's very well run, but there's going to be mistakes. And I can assure you that there were mistakes made in this fucking incident, as there is every time there's something like this that happens. And that's what I wanted to try to assuage people's concerns for, because I actually got a lot of people reaching out to me on Instagram, people like, hey, what do you think of these fires? What, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm trying to explain to them in a text or whatever, but I thought I'd talk about it a little bit tonight because I got a little insight on how all this works. And I just think that there's so many people out there spouting off about shit they know little about, So, CAL FIRE has an aggressive vegetative management program, and there is a decent amount of funding allocated to fire prevention, but the majority of the budget is for fire suppression. So that's where the majority of the money's going, is to put the fires out, not to do all of this fire prevention stuff. Although that is something that we do, that is something that is done in a lot of different communities statewide, but there could always be more, could there not?
There can be. Now, when you were running crews, you did the fire breaks along I-5.
Mm-hmm. They're still doing those.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was providing what? Because you don't necessarily see a whole lot of homes there.
All that was a scrape. And it's something that has to be done annually. So the crews would do a scrape for about 9 miles on both sides, the east and the west side of Interstate 5, in a place called 9 Mile Hill. And they would remove the vegetation down to bare mineral soil so that if a fire started along that grade, kind of an incipient fire, it would hit that fire break and it would prevent it from going up into the hills where there were homes on either side of the freeway. And it stops a lot of fires. But let me just say, if there was a significant wind event, that scratch line, that 6 foot wide scrape isn't going to do a damn thing. Mm-hmm. Just in the same way that all of the things that they're saying about, oh, well, they should have done this in Southern California, I'm here to tell you, it wouldn't have done a damn thing. I mean, it would help. I'm not going to say that it's not going to have some impact, but when the fire's up doing what the fire's doing, it's not going to matter. So
what you're saying is when Mother Nature's got a burr up her butt, she's got the upper hand.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that, people deal with in the fire service is opposition for these fuel breaks and clearance requirements. And the reason why that is because when you've lived in an area for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and then you've never been impacted by a disaster, there's a lot of apathy, and there seems to be a lot less importance that people place on the needs to provide said fuel modification, even though in California, in the state responsibility areas, residents are required to comply with a thing called Public Resources Code 4291. And that is inspections that we used to do annually, and we'd go out and we'd inspect people's property and advise them, hey, you need to do this, this, and this to be in compliance with it. And CAL FIRE could go and they could cite these people after we go back and we re-inspect and they haven't done anything. And occasionally they would do that. But it really goes back to the homeowner themselves for taking that responsibility on themselves. Just as I said when I started, you're on your own best fire department. You're your own best first responder. But people aren't willing to do that because, they want to provide their privacy and their scenic beauty, and they want their nice little enclaves that they've built up into the mountains, and they don't wish to see that altered. But it is entirely the individuals living in that environment to take the responsibility for themselves and hold the local citizens and community leaders responsible for demanding that compliance. But it always, shit always flows uphill. So who's everybody going after right now? It's the governor's fucking fault. Oh, well, it's this person's fault. It's CAL FIRE's fault. It's this, it's that. People want to play the blame game, and that's just the way that people are. Yeah. Instead of taking responsibility. Now, I'm not saying that some people haven't done that.
Well, I have to say, I appreciate the fact that you make sure that the leaves are off the roof and keep the trees trimmed around the house. And you do cut the fire break up, and that's helpful to help prevent, and more people should be doing that. Yeah.
It's absolutely vital that you do that.
Mm-hmm. It's gorgeous to have a great big tree overhanging your house and providing all the shade, but it also is opening a can of worms.
Right. Let me see if I can get caught up here. Bill says, after losing everything, we had a family of 7 when I was 9. I would much rather duck a tornado than a fire. I wouldn't want to really have to duck either. I seriously wouldn't want to duck either. But yeah, fires, man, of this scope and this magnitude, it's very tragic. It sucks, but you gotta know that if you mess with the bull, you're going to occasionally get the horn. And that's what happens when you live in an area where this isn't the first rodeo, man. And so people, again, they let their guard down. It's like, yeah, fuck, 10, 20 years go by. It's never happened to me. It's not going to happen to me. And then when it happens, then people are starting to point fingers like, oh, well, there wasn't enough water in the reservoir. There wasn't this. There wasn't a fire break. There wasn't that. The fucking mayor was over here. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are going to have to answer some questions. But, it really has to go back to those people need to ask, hey, what did we do at our own local level? What did we do demand of our leaders? What did we do to demand of our community to say, hey, this is what we need to do? And what did we do individually to make sure our shit was tight? Right? But I don't know if that question's being answered. People are just in disarray right now, and they're looking for somebody to blame for this, So
I think Skane's girl was asking something about the lack of water.
Let's see here. It says your professional opinion regarding the high winds and lack of water. Yeah, the lack of water. Let's talk about that. So my understanding, and I don't have all the facts, this is just what I've kind of heard, but they have a reservoir above the community, Santa Ynez Reservoir. And I don't know if it was down for repairs or why it wasn't full. Obviously, it should have been full, but it wasn't at the time. And could they have used that water? 100%. Would it have made a difference? In my opinion, no, it would have not. Because I've been on fires like this. I was on the Cedar fire when it started in, I don't remember what year it was, 2012 or something like that, in San Diego County. And it fucking, at the time, it burned. It was the largest fire in California history. It burned like so far and so fast and for so long, killed a bunch of people. And I saw that fire start. I was there when it was 10 acres in size. They told us to bed down, and then the winds hit and we were off to the races for the next 3 days without sleep. I mean, it was brutal. And it was an incredible thing to witness when you see a fire burning like that. And we've had several fires like that since then in this state. And the outcome is always the same. You're not going to stop it when it's doing what it's doing. 70-mile-an-hour winds. Let me tell you something. And I spoke about this in a previous episode, pretty recently, actually. But when you have those Santanas that are set up, the winds are coming, they're coming and they're blowing offshore. So they're coming from inland and they're blowing out to the sea. So they're blowing from east to west, and they're coming and they're descending off of the continental divide, the Rocky Mountains, and they descend down into the LA basin. And as they descend, they compress. And what you have when you compress air is it's called adiabatic heating. It's the adiabatic lapse rate. It's like 5.5 per 1,000 feet or whatever. But what happens, just like when you pump up a bicycle, tire, and you would feel the thing, it would get hot, right? That's the same thing that's happening. So the air is actually descending and it's being compressed and it's warming. And as it warms, it's going to squeeze out all the moisture. So it's going to dry. And then that dry air now is in the single digits with regard to its relative humidity. And so everything ahead of it is being dried out and preheated. And you have a very receptive amount of fuel out ahead of this thing. So all of those embers, all those little tiny embers that are being blown out are landing on things and they're starting fires. Why do you think their entire neighborhoods burned? Do you think because they needed to cut a dozer line through they had roads? Mm-hmm. Fires like this jump freeways. Fires like this spot and start new fires a mile ahead of themselves. This isn't uncommon when fires are doing this.
Didn't the one in Redding jump the water?
I don't know which one in Redding you're referring to.
When EJ's house burned down.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, jump the river. I mean, the river's not even that wide. I'm talking fires will spot and start new fires from that fire a mile ahead of themselves. And now you've got a whole new fire that's taken off and doing a thing. So, we can sit there and say, well, they could have had more water. And certainly, yes, that would have been helpful at some point during the fire as things kind of started to subside. Crews were starting to get organized, get into place, develop a plan. But what you have when you have a fire that's taking off in the initial attack stages is an entire amount of disarray and chaos, and there's a lot of independent action. I'm not saying complete chaos, but you do have crews in there that are just like taking independent action because there's nobody to really direct them. You haven't established divisions. You haven't established branches. You haven't established anything. You're kind of coming up with a plan as it's developing, and it's rapidly expanding. So, there's just this perception that, hey, you're going to call the fire department and they're going to make it go away. Well, in this instance, the water thing, again, that's going to be an oversight that they're going to need to look at. And why they ran out of water. But I will tell you this as well. What I saw a number of different videos from this fire, whatever it's called, Palisades fire, where you had municipal fire engines like laying supply lines and setting up shop and squirting water onto fully involved structures, like fighting the fire, man. Like, what are you doing? It's not what you do. You don't lay a fucking supply line. You don't like put the water main on top of the pavement. Essentially, that's what you do when you're laying your supply. They're putting out a 4, 5, 6-inch supply line, hooking it to their engine, and then cranking up the pump and squirting water. You don't do that in this type of a scenario. For one, you're mucking up the means of ingress and egress to that location. And what are you doing squirting water on a fully involved house? So this may come out in the after action report. This may be found, there's probably a lot of water wasting. But see, nobody's really talking about that right now because all they're talking about is, there wasn't enough water in the reservoir, so that's why all these houses burned down. No, they burned down because they were going to burn down regardless of whether or not you had water because of the way this fire burned. That's what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. So, any more questions?
I was going to say the ocean's there, so there's plenty of water where they could dip a bucket in, but it's salt water, so I don't know the effects that would have. Yeah,
that's typically something that we're going to shy away from utilizing. The planes that they brought down, the super scoopers from Canada, I think they're CL415s or whatever. Those were brought down, and I'm not sure exactly what effect that's going to have on their equipment, but they're going to have to do some pretty probably extensive rehabilitation of that equipment. And I don't know who's going to pay for that or how that's going to, be done. But, if you were to try to put a helicopter and have them dip out of the ocean, you're going to have a lot of rotor wash, and all that corrosive salt air is going to go into their turbines. It's not really very helpful. And you're going to basically destroy $1 million piece of equipment by maybe, the better option would be to fly inland, even if you had a longer turnaround time, and dip out of another water source, say a swimming pool or a pond or a fresh water source. That would be the better option rather than ruining your piece of equipment that's millions of dollars. But the super scoopers, I mean, those are cool. We don't own any of those in CAL FIRE because it's not a resource we would utilize very often because we don't get a lot of fires along the coast. But they have those up in Canada because there's water everywhere. And when they get a wildland fire, that's a preferred method of choice. And I will also say this, that how they fight fire with those is much different than how you would fight fire with one dropping retardant. Retardant isn't going to be used in a direct fashion. It's going to be dropped outside of the fire line to treat the green, if you will, not the black or the perimeter or the fire, but outside in the green, it's going to treat that. And so the fire like burns into it. So the fire burns into it. It slows the progress of the fire. If you were to treat that fire directly, you would be wasting the resource. But the water doesn't have that capability. So that's basically, you're putting it right on the fire's edge to suppress a fire. But anyhow, okay. Let's see here. I am trying to get caught up on, because I've been rambling on here about stuff just because
you be knowing.
Well, I've got an opinion on it. And like I say, it just frustrates me when I see people spouting off about shit they don't really know about. And, bless their heart for trying. You would be more helpful if you could read some of this.
If I could read them, yeah.
You can lean forward or something, because I can't do the rest of this and try to figure out who's saying something I need to respond to.
I don't know how the residents would know if there's hydrant water or not.
Is that somebody's question?
Kathy McCall? I'm not sure if that's exactly what she was asking.
It's hard to think the residents didn't know there was no hydrant water source if they demand that it be maintained. Honestly, hydrant water would have helped. Oh, sure. Absolutely. I think, Kathy, from what way I understand it, and, again, this is all like, hearsay or whatever, but they ran out of water after a period of time. It wasn't that they didn't have any water in the hydrants. They didn't have as much as they thought. They had apparently millions of gallons in storage tanks, but this other source that they had, which was a concreted lined reservoir, a Santa Ynez reservoir, was empty. I don't know if it was for repairs or what have you, but they wound up having pressure reduced after a period of time, is the way I understand it. What's up, Randy in Kentucky? How you doing? Good to see you, man. Skane's girl subject came up briefly with brother in San Jose who was like, it wouldn't matter if you had water with 100-mile-an-hour winds. At that point, it does not. I mean, it's going to help in some instances. I'm not going to say that fuel modification, water, some of the things that could have been improved wouldn't have helped in certain circumstances. But again, when fires are really, really ripping, it's kind of our job to protect life more so than the property. And so we need to coordinate with law enforcement to make sure people are able to get out of the fire zone. And that's really what we're most kind of concerned with. And, after things kind of settle down and we get a brief break in the weather, that's when the work actually starts to take place. So, all right. Hogs 14 says, I will say Whiskey Town National Park has done a lot of fire management, getting rid of old brush, etc. They've been doing it for 6 months now heavily. Yeah, I was just up there yesterday running again, and I saw where they were doing that kind of down around the visitor center. But I mean, to your point, Whiskey Town, 95% of it burned. The entire fucking park burned. Like, what was it? Maybe 6 years ago when the car fire came through. And that's the one that burned our son's house down. And so that park has been nuked, but lo and behold, it's coming back. There's a lot of dead trees in there still, and they, fall whenever the wind blows. But, that's what happens, man. It needs to be cleaned out, and then, it's going to renew itself over time.
So we saw a lot of that when we were hiking the Pacific Crest Trail as well, where it had burned, but you could see the new growth coming through. And in one hand, it's like, here's all this dead, but on the other hand, there's beauty in that, because it allows other things that probably would have been not able to grow because they wouldn't have had the sunlight. Right.
Now this is what I'm saying with regard to the politicization of this incident. And, some people are using it and trying to use it for their own political advantage. Trump's doing it. Newsom would be doing it if he wasn't in the position right now where he is, where he's trying to be like, hey, let's, they need to work with us here. Let's take the high road. Well, he's saying that because there's a lot of heat coming his way. But honestly, I think he's actually doing what somebody in his position should kind of be doing. I don't think he's fucking it up that bad. Because it is his responsibility, but it's not. It falls more squarely on the local people, right? He doesn't have time to be making sure that there's fucking water in this reservoir and hydrants are working. That's not the governor's job. And now that's the local community and the local entities that's their job. So some heads are going to roll on this thing, but I don't really think it's great that people are out politicizing it until we, know more of the facts. But here's a video kind of indicating what I'm talking about.
Out of water, and the governor's staring at the fire with his hands in his pockets. Now, we have a rule about men putting their hands in their pockets, but this is neither the time nor the place to discuss it. People are trapped. Homes and schools are gone. And Newsom hasn't contained a single acre. The governor waited 24 hours to send in the National Guard. Water management, forest management, Gavin doesn't know what he's doing. Again, Trump warned him about this years ago.
Take care of the floors, the floors of the forests, very important. You look at other countries where they do it differently, and it's a whole different story. I was with the president of Finland, and he said, we have a much different, we're a forest nation. He called it a forest nation. And they spend a lot of time on raking and cleaning and doing things, and they don't have any problem. And when it is, it's a very small problem.
Newsom, after the election, called an emergency special session in California to Trump-proof the state. Not fireproof it, Trump-proof it, whatever that means. Where are the emergency escape roads that were supposed to have been built? People had to abandon their cars in the middle of the road and run away from the flames because there's only one way in and one way out. Why weren't the forest beds treated? Why are we running out of water? Joe Biden hasn't helped at all. In October, the Biden administration canceled crucial controlled burns in California. These are critical to forest management. Canceled them.
Yeah, this is all stuff that's going to get fleshed out in an after action report and probably a pretty thorough investigation because, there's a lot of people affected and it's very high profile with all the celebrities and the rich people and, California being what California is, I suppose, at least from the standpoint of the elite media and what they're concerned about. I noticed that they're not very concerned about the folks in North Carolina that are still struggling to put their lives back together. But of course, this is the new bright, shiny object is, Paris Hilton lost her home. So, I don't know. I think when I hear like Trump, and to his point, I think, Trump's on the right track talking about, hey, we need to do more vegetative management, but you're not going to come in and just rake up the floors and make the thing go away. That's not going to happen. There's always more that you can do to improve, and there will have to be a lot of improvements going forward. But again, it's going to have to come from the people within that community because most people, they don't want to I don't want to take that bush down. I don't want to lose my privacy screen. I like this right here. This is paradise, and they don't want to see fire lines surrounding the ridges, the ridge tops in their area. They want to look up and see, something beautiful. But, really they should be running dozers up on those lines. They should be having dozers with big anchor chain, just ripping out brush and putting in, lines across these ridges and keep reinforcing and improving those so that maybe you'll have a chance to contain something when the winds stop blowing. But again, as I said, when the winds are blowing, you ain't stopping it. Mm-hmm. Right?
Exactly.
You're awful quiet over there.
Well, I was trying to read what Bill Warner was saying.
Okay.
As an example of devastation.
As an example of destruction of the old, allowing room for the growth of the new, look at Mount St. Helens. Yeah, there was actually, in 1914, Lassen National Park, just right behind us here, up on the mountain, that we look out our kitchen window every day. It had an eruption, and there's a pretty awesome picture, in some of the old historical photos of the area, showing that eruption And I mean, there's an area that was called the devastated area that just completely like lava flow. It was a pyroclastic flow that came down, melted all the snow, and then just wiped out the east side of the mountain. And it's referred to as the devastated area, but you go up there now and you wouldn't even know it, because over time things have a chance to, nature just does what nature does. Right.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
Hogs is talking about the rich and famous.
That's because the rich are their bread and butter and donations, etc. Now, if they chose to move to another state, maybe the money slows down a little bit. It's pretty sad if you think about it. What I heard, and I don't know this, I didn't research it or whatever, but I did hear that, the Biden administration has pledged the federal government will give 100% reimbursement for these fires for up to 180 days. I didn't hear that same level of support for the hurricanes in North Carolina and Tennessee. So, I mean, obviously his constituency, the people that are most affected there in California, are, going to be the benefactors of whatever decisions that they've made at the federal level. And I don't know. It's an interesting thing. No?
Yeah. Well, money talks, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Or car fire. Nature does always find a way. I don't know. B. Terry says it's Camp Pendleton. Okay. I would think it is. I don't know. Where's Camp Pendleton? Is that the one in San Diego? Or is it like, I'm not sure. I've probably been there, but I don't even recall like where it's at. Camp Pendleton. I haven't heard anything about it, so I can't speak to that, quite honestly. Yeah, I think we've covered pretty much everything there on that fire deal.
North of San Diego.
Oh, okay. Yeah. North of SD. I don't think these fires aren't in San Diego. They are in Los Angeles County, I believe. But I'm not even certain of that. But one thing I will say is there's a lot of, there's just one more thing on the fire department, and then we'll move on, I guess. But there's always this, I guess, just recurring theme out there that the fire department needs more funding, and, they didn't have enough this or they didn't have enough that. And I will say that CAL FIRE, I can speak to that. I'm telling you, man, they're not short on funding for new equipment. They have done, like, their entire fleet is fucking brand new. There's not an old pickup truck or old anything in their fleet. Even their reserve engines are like dialed in. And all of their ground resources, their dozers, the crew buses were, replaced. Everything's been upgraded. New aircraft. They've just added like 4 new C-130s to the fleet. So they're also going to be flying C-130s in addition to the DC-10s and the fleet of S-2s that they fly. All new helicopters with night vision, night capable. They're flying 3 different shifts, right? Pilots are flying 3 different shifts. They can fly them 24 hours a day at night. And it's just incredible the amount of resource that they've spent. So when I hear people say that, I just kind of like go, you don't really have an understanding, man. I saw their mobile kitchen unit going down the road, like, I don't know, a few months back. And I thought, what the hell is that? It looks like a CAL FIRE rig. But I'm thinking, no, what it looked like when I got up to it looked like one of those NASCAR toy haulers. It was so tall and so big and just, it was so beautiful. And I'm thinking, man, that's a waste of money. The ones we used to have were damn good. Because I remember when I started, we used to eat what was called the Sonoma Kitchen. And it was a fucking, like a Blackstone with wheels. That's what it was. It was like a grill, like a big ass grill that had wheels. And that's what they'd feed everybody on. They'd fire that thing up and cook steaks. And that's what we had every night was a steak.
You were roughing it.
Steak, potato, fucking some salad, and a baked potato. Right? And beans. That was it. That's what we fed. And now they eat like fucking like it's a gourmet kitchen. It's incredible.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. I mean, I've been to a couple fires where the kitchen was out.
Yeah, they just added a bunch of new personnel. So it's not like they're short on personnel because the union fought to get them less hours for work. So now they work a 66-hour work week. So, I mean, it bothers me, I guess. Here's another rant, guys. It just kind of bothers me when I see people, heaping so much praise on firefighters like they're fucking heroes or something. No, we're not. Occasionally, there's something that you do that's heroic. I've done that a couple times in my career where I've actually, through the course of what I've done at that very moment, I've probably saved someone's life for that reason. And when you do that, it's great. You feel like amazing, but you don't walk around all day with this thing on your shoulder like I'm some fucking hero. I'm just a dude doing my job. And I see people like always say that about firemen. Oh, heroes and this and that. And it just, I don't know, it just bothers me a little bit because we're nobody different than everyone else. We get paid very well. We get a lot of time off. And if you don't take in and appreciate that and appreciate the praise that just gets heaped upon you by just the mere existence of you showing up in somebody's town, that's what would really bother me when fucking firefighters would not even like think that was something super special. When you've got little kids out there holding up a sign, oh, thank you, firefighters. They're like kindergarten class or something. And they're out there doing that. And I would almost feel guilty. It's like, you don't need to do that for me. Seriously. So anyhow, another little rant, but,
well, it's kind of interesting because the police officers don't see the same amount of love.
No, people don't like they don't like cops, man. They like firefighters, generally speaking, but they don't show cops any love. And, they got a hard job to do too. Mm-hmm. Some of them are good cops. Some of them are bad cops, but you can say the same about firemen. Some of them are really good and some shouldn't even fucking be on a fire engine.
Yeah.
Like DEI hires and just lame people, not even a DEI hire, just a lazy fuck that, shouldn't have a job. But it's the good ones that carry the rest of those that don't. And that's how government works. Mm-hmm. That's civil service for you. Anywho. Yeah, that's I saw that too, man, where they're expecting more winds kicking up again for next week. So I think they're going to try to make some hay while they can and get all those lines blacked in. But you won't see them saying that things are 100% contained, even though you might not even see a smoke. And they make sure that it's going to be wind tested, that they don't feel like it's going to come out of there. And so they're going to mop it up very deep interior before they actually pencil it in on the map and say, oh, this portion's contained. And so it'll stay open for a while so that the federal funding will continue to flow, because as soon as they contain the fire, then, that it changes the funding for, how the fire is going to be supported.
Like what Terry had to say. Be Terry down at the bottom.
Semper Fi. Semper Fi. Yeah. Kathy McCall says the latest warning, more extreme wind events coming through the Santa Ana. And here's the other thing. I actually talked to my son because I had checked the weather prior to this even occurring. And I saw where Southern Cal was going to be getting, pretty significant wind event. And so I texted him in the morning. He was going on duty. And I said, hey man, make sure your out of county bag's packed. And he said, oh yeah, it's already on the bus. He didn't get sent. He lucked out. He managed to get out of this one, but essentially they stripped the entire North State, and they typically don't do that. I'm not saying the entire North State, but we are very drawn down right now up here in the North. So if there was something to crack off, man, Newsom would look real fucking bad, because he's the one who basically told North Ops, hey, dump shit. He's the one. Because that isn't what North Ops is all about. They're not going to do that, man. They're going to hold their resources because we need to be able to make sure we can handle business here. But I actually ran into the HEM, who's our heavy equipment manager in In-N-Out Burger yesterday. And he was basically saying, oh yeah, man, there's like fucking 3 engines in the unit. He said they dumped the entire unit. They sent the copter down there. They sent like all this stuff. And so I was just like, well, you know, and he was telling me that that's how it happened. But I don't know where I was going with that. So anyhow, another thing I was going to mention, and this might not affect that many people listening to this, but it will affect me because I utilize this app, and TikTok's going to be going away apparently on the 19th, right before Donald Trump goes being sworn in. And I don't know what let me play this right here, right quick.
Today on the floor of Congress to speak out against the ban on TikTok that will take place in 6 days on January 19th. I call on President Biden and President-elect Trump to put a pause on this ban so 170 million Americans don't lose their free speech, and millions of Americans' livelihood will be ended if this ban takes place. We need to be for free speech. We can protect Americans' data. We can protect us from foreign interference on algorithms, but we should not ban TikTok. I call on others to join me in standing up for free speech and opposing this TikTok ban.
Night, B. Terry. Thanks for dropping in.
Good night.
You know, that's one Democrat I tend to agree with at this point. I don't generally hear Democrats from California on the House floor saying anything that I agree with, but that one I actually kind of agree with. You know, as far as how those people who make a living as a creator on TikTok are going to get by, well, they're going to have to find other ways to diversify their income and figure that out. But I certainly, I'm a fan of free speech, so I don't really like the direction this is going, but I wanted to throw it to you, Rebecca. What do you think?
I don't have TikTok, so I don't have a whole lot of perspective on it. However, I honestly think that it will probably get down to the wire, but it will not go away. That's my guess. Mm-hmm. Somebody's going to buy it.
That's kind of what I thought too, but I don't know if it was actually if they're willing to sell it, you know. And so I think if it was up for sale and they were willing to sell it here or whatever, there's people with offers on the table, from what I understand. And that has been my thought from the get-go, is that, you know, somebody's going to buy it, Elon Musk or whatever, or somebody with, you know, resources where they can make that happen. And I hope it's a conservative that does it. Somebody at least committed to the idea of free speech and less censorship. You know, it doesn't have to be a conservative, but certainly somebody who's not willing to just take it and make it a total propaganda platform. Because I think free speech is something that is so important, so vitally important in this country. And yeah, I think that's what conservatives need to do, actually, is spend some money and put their money where their mouth is, and start buying up some of these places where people go for information, whether it be a newspaper or a television corporation or whatever, broadcast corporation, or an app like this. I think it's of extreme value to the health of this country.
Yeah,
but,
so that's what I think is going to happen. I think somebody, and they may take it right to the last minute,
right,
but they'll accept some offer.
Sure. Let me ask you this, Rebecca. Who do you think has been most responsible for the shift in the balance of power within the last 4 years? Because obviously there has been a tremendous shift since 2020, 2021. going from the Biden administration to now switching to, kind of a different feel, going to a Trump administration and a change of leadership at the federal level and elsewhere in the country. So who do you think's been most responsible for that shift?
I think that Trump started his campaigning. Obviously, he started his campaigning quite a bit ago, and he's had a lot of people behind him that are very influential people. And I think that has kind of helped wake folks up. Plus the things that have been happening, I believe that American people have just kind of come to realize that I don't like this. I don't like this. We need change. And they're willing to cross the line and go for Trump. And they're hoping for the best.
Yeah. I don't think that Trump is responsible. I wouldn't say that.
Well, no, I'm not saying Trump is responsible. I'm talking about the people that are behind Trump. He's surrounded himself with people that I think are very influential. That
I said that who's been the most responsible? What person? Do you have a person in mind? Not just
a specific person? I don't know that I don't know that I could say a specific person.
Okay.
I just think that there's been some Democrats that have actually changed their mind, changed their direction, and that's been very influential for others to take suit and follow.
Right. Here and There says the shift is worldwide and all libs are getting ousted. Yeah, good night, Kathy. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Good night, Kathy.
And Hog says the government, period. One of those F around and find out, and they did. You think the government's responsible for the shift in the balance of power? I would, this is what I would say. If I had to pick one person, I would say that it's Elon Musk.
That's funny because that's who I would say, but I'm not feeling 100% on that, but I think that he's definitely got a lot of influence as to why.
Well, it's not that he has the influence. It's what he's done. He's bought a platform that was all about censoring people. That's what Twitter was. I mean, if you didn't fall along the company narrative, you were silenced or taken off or deplatformed or whatever. They took Trump off of that. So to say that Trump is the one person responsible, now he's a catalyst for a lot of this, but he was taken off. He was, run through the ringer by the establishment. What has been the thing that's been most instrumental is the restoration of the ability for people to speak freely and have a platform to do so. Because that was a really, if you think about it, what's happened in the last 4 years has been something I've never seen, where you can't even speak your mind in the United States of America without the threat of, oh, I'm going to get a strike on YouTube, or, oh, I'm going to have my account taken down, or, oh, I'm going to have it labeled misinformation or harmful content. So by Elon doing what he has done, by opening that up and exposing the Twitter files and going in there and restructuring that entire apparatus, that entire platform, so that people can now go in there and exchange ideas freely, which I actually don't do on Twitter because I find it to be too antagonistic and too vitriolic, where people are just hanging out there just so that they can shit talk somebody, and it's just a tit for tat type of a thing. Some people really get off on that. That's the bad part about it. The good part about it is that you do get information flowing your way in a more unscripted and unedited version. And so people can make the determination for themselves, hey, is this something that, I find value in or not? And so I think he's the person who has been most responsible for the shift in that balance of power within the last 4 years. And, I guess the reason why I say that is because, Mark Zuckerberg, he was a part of what has taken place with the censorship industrial complex from the government, pressuring him to do things and take down information and, making threats to him and his platform. And, he's come out and kind of had a little change of heart here in the last, I don't know, a few months or so.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on that? Do you think he's, you think he's being disingenuous, or why do you think he's doing that?
I don't know if he's being disingenuous or not, but I don't want to just automatically trust what it is that he's saying. I'm very reserved about what he has to say. It just really needs to be proven to me that he means what he's saying. Right.
Yeah, I'm actually, I guess I'm a little more optimistic, quite honestly. I'm not saying, I believe the guy 100%. And of course he has a motivation as to why he's doing what he's doing. But the fact that he came out prior to Trump winning the election and writing that letter to Jim Jordan saying, hey, this is what the Biden administration and the FBI did to me. This is what they threatened us with. This was like a 2-page letter that was given to Jim Jordan, who's doing an investigation on the ethics of, what the administration's done with the Hunter Biden laptop and all that shit. He came out and said that prior to the election. So it wasn't like he was just like, oh, I know Trump's going to win or whatever, or waited till he won, so he was at some risk by doing that. So I do think that there's a chance that he is changing his tune, maybe. And it could be because he sees the writing on the wall. The shifting tide of public opinion may have had something to do with that. Seeing his numbers go in the opposite direction from the standpoint of monetarily might have had something else to do with it. Mm-hmm. Right? These are all factors. But again, I think a person can evolve and can change. Bear in mind, dude was 19 when he started fucking Facebook, and he's just now like 40. He's the third richest person in the world.
Yeah, I'm not saying that he can't change. I'm just not jumping completely into what he's saying. I'm reserved with what he has to say.
Right. Well,
obviously there's a lot of people out there that have changed their opinions and
yeah. Did you ever get a chance to listen to that interview that he did with Rogan recently?
I have not had a chance to. I think I've listened to some of it, but I have not listened to all of it.
Yeah, you should listen to it. I think it's a good listen. It just gives you kind of you can make a determination for yourself. But here's a little clip from that. And again, this ties directly into Elon, because what Elon did as a precursor helped Mark Zuckerberg get to this point in his evolution.
Actions that I was just referring to. I mean, a lot of this is documented. I mean, because Jim Jordan and the House had this whole investigation and committee into the kind of government censorship around stuff like this, and we produced all these documents, and it's all in the public domain. I mean, basically, these people from the Biden administration would call up our team and like scream at them and curse, and it's like these documents it's all kind of out there.
Oh, did you record any of those phone calls?
I don't think we but I think
I want to listen.
I mean, there are emails. the emails are published. It's all kind of out there, and they're like, and basically it just got to this point where we were like, no, we're not gonna take down things that are true. That's ridiculous. They want us to take down this meme of Leonardo DiCaprio looking at a TV talking about how 10 years from now or something, you're going to see an ad that says, okay, if you took a COVID vaccine, you're eligible for, for this kind of payment, like this sort of like class action lawsuit type meme. And they're like, no, you have to take that down. And we just said, no, we're not going to take down humor and satire. We're not going to take down things that are true. And then at some point, I guess, I don't know, it flipped a bit. I mean, Biden, when he gave some statement at some point, I don't know if it was a press conference or to some journalists, where he basically was like, these guys are killing people. And I don't know, then like all these different agencies and branches of government basically just like started investigating and coming after our company. It was brutal. It was brutal.
Wow.
You can't tell me he doesn't look like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. Does he not? I'm straight up, man.
Come on, Scoob.
Ruh-roh. Yeah. So anyhow, that's a pretty good listen. It's about a 3-hour interview. He sat down here this last week with Rogan and talked all about that stuff. And it kind of gave me a little bit of a different perspective on the guy. I've always kind of thought he's, not so kosher, but I'm holding out hope that maybe he is evolving as he grows and becomes more of a man, if you will. And he talked about that a little bit, his evolution into manhood. So,
All right. You need to cough that direction.
excuse me. Sorry about that, guys. Scooby snacks. Yeah. So I have one other thing I wanted to leave you guys with, and it's more of a thought about legacy. And I had a video of this, but I didn't want to play the video because it had music in it. And I thought that the music would cause my video not to be able to be monetized or whatever. So I thought I'd read it to you instead. And it goes like this. It says, have you ever wondered if in 100 years, in 2125, we will all be buried with our relatives and friends? Strangers will live in our homes, which we fought so hard to build, and they will own everything we have today. All our properties will be unknown to those who have yet be born, including that car you spent a fortune on. Our descendants will hardly know who we were, nor will they remember us. How many of us know our grandfather's father? After our death, we will be remembered for a few years. Then we will only be a portrait in somebody's library, and a few years later, our history. Our photos, our deeds will go into the dustbin of oblivion. Maybe if one day we stopped to analyze these questions, we would understand how ignorant and weak the dream of obtaining everything was. If only we could think differently. Our approaches, our thoughts would change. We would be different people, always wanting more and more without having time for the things that were really worthwhile in this life. Legacy. I change all that to live and enjoy those walks I've never taken, those hugs never given, those kisses to our children and our loves. Let's reconsider our priorities and embrace the moments that truly matter. For in the end, it's not the possessions we leave behind, but the love we share that defines our legacy.
So for me, I think it's very important for our grandchildren to know who I am, because my parents were old when they had me. And so I did not have grandparents. And so I think it's very important for them to know. And luckily our children, or our grandchildren, actually have great grandparents, which is really rare. Mm-hmm. And we do have a picture of 4 generations, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So I kind of hold that to heart. I think that's extremely special.
Right.
And I absolutely love spending as much time as I can with them.
Yeah. Do you at all think about legacy?
It's only going to last for a couple generations, and then they're not going to know. Mm-hmm. So like I said, if you're lucky to know your great grandparents, that's great. In our case, we have grandchildren who know their great grandma. They knew their great grandpa, yeah, but in another year, they're not going to know who he was because he will have passed long enough and that memory will be erased.
Right.
So I honestly don't think that it makes it past that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't either. For the average person, I think the average person, that's essentially kind of your world. The only people that legacy in that sense really matters if you're somebody who's maybe famous or something, you know. But, you know, again, what does it really, I suppose, matter? And,
well, I think the legacy is actually for the person who's living, the older person who's living, because the little ones, like I say, you know, unless they're older than 5 years old, they're not going to keep that memory.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's not something that I think about often either. But it's kind of funny. I got this video here that kind of sums up legacy, at least from the standpoint of the way Mike Tyson thinks about it.
For this fight, you are setting a monumental opportunity for kids my age to see the legend Mike Tyson in the ring for the first time. So after such a successful career, what type of legacy would you like to leave behind when it's all said and done?
Well, I don't know. I don't believe in the word legacy. I just think that's another word for ego. Legacy doesn't mean nothing. That's just some word everybody grabbed onto. Someone said that word and everyone grabbed on the word, so now it's used every 5 seconds. It means absolutely nothing to me. I'm just passing through. I'm going to die, and it's going to be over. Who cares about legacy after that? What a big ego. So I'm going to die. I want people to think that I'm this, I'm great. No, we're nothing. We're just dead. We're dust. We're absolutely nothing. Our legacy is nothing.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That is something that I have not heard before, someone say that as an answer.
Can you really imagine somebody say, I want my legacy to be this way when you're dead? Why do you want somebody, you think somebody really wants to think about you? What's the audacity? I think, I want people to think about me when I'm gone. Who the fuck cares about me when I'm gone? Well, my kids maybe, or grandkids. Who the fuck cares?
And again, thank you so much for sharing that.
That poor girl, man. She's just like, why did I even ask this guy that question? Man, what a nut. He's quite the guy.
Yes.
And he will have
dust.
He will have a legacy that will outlive us all. And that's the reality of being famous. But yeah, I thought I'd leave you guys with that. But unless you have anything else, Rebecca, I think we're going to call it an evening tonight and put a bow on episode 94. And I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight and hearing a little bit of perspective on the Southern California wildfires that seem to occur every year, but seemingly people tend to forget that happens every year.
Yeah, somewhere in California, there's a fire.
Yeah, just like somewhere in Kansas, there's a tornado. So again, thanks again for joining us tonight, and we're going to call it an evening. So
yes, good night, and thanks for joining us.
All right.
And remember, we're just dust.
That's right. And homesteading is not harmful content.
Yeah.
See you later, Bill.
Bye.
And see all the rest of you.